Hey, everybody, this is part two of the Digital Discipleship Theology series that we're doing here on YouTube. Last time we looked at the introduction to theology and just the idea of what is theology. So if you haven't watched that, go ahead and go watch that first. This is part two, and we are talking about worldviews, and worldviews in general. So what is a worldview? A worldview is how a person views the world. It's exactly how it sounds. It's the lens by which somebody sees the world. That is, what is the belief system that a person has in their minds, or what they have been taught, or what they think, and how does that determine how they view the world, how they interact with one another. And Ravi Zacharias, he's a Christian apologist. He has 4 words by which to differentiate between worldviews and how to compare and contrast worldviews. These are 4 words that we can use to evaluate the consistency of a worldview, and are they consistent in all 4 of these areas, or are there areas where they have some explaining to do? And so Ravi Zacharias' words are these, and I just want to talk about these 4 words today so that you can understand what makes up a worldview. And then next week we'll talk about specific worldviews and what it is that there are different worldviews, like monotheism, atheism, whatever, the different worldviews that there are. So these 4 words are origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. And I just want to talk about these 4 words really briefly. There are questions that go along with these 4 words. Origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. First, origin. The question with origin is, why is there something rather than nothing? That's the eternal sort of question that you get in philosophy, is this question of why is there something rather than nothing? And usually there are 2 options given. Either everything is eternal or uncreated, or everything was created by an uncaused first cause. And that's often what philosophers use to describe God. He is the uncaused first cause. And then the question would become, if this uncaused first cause does exist, then who or what is this uncaused first cause? Who or what is God? How many gods are there? Is there one? Are there many? Why? How do we know? Can we know? How does this God or these gods relate to the universe? Are they using us as pawns in their game? Do they have a relationship with us? Did they just set a course and then leave us to it? Or are they directly involved even daily? Are they causing things to happen, or are they sitting back and watching things unfold? Or maybe a little bit of both. So origin, it's really the question of who is God? And if origin is the question of who is God, then meaning is the next question, and that's the question of what is the point of being here? Really, the question that we're asking are, and these are the 2 most important questions that anybody can answer: who or what is God? Who or what is man? That is, what does it mean to be human? Do we have an intrinsic value? Do we have a value in and of ourselves just for being human? Do we have a purpose in being here, or are we an accident? Are we an accident, or are we on purpose? And how we answer that question will determine our life's meaning. It will determine, is our life valuable even if the world, once the world is destroyed, did it ever matter that we were here? Do we have to honor one another and treat one another with respect just because we are created on purpose, or just because we don't want to mess up the evolutionary system? How will we answer that question will determine how we end up living, which would go into number 3, morality. And the question at stake here is there good and evil? Is there such a thing as good and evil? And if there is, what does it mean to be good? What does it mean to be evil? Do we have moral duties, moral responsibilities by which we ought to live? Is there an ought to? Or do we all just kind of come up with our own morality? See, if the universe is always existent and nobody created us, then do we make up our own good and evil? Are good and evil actual things that exist, or did we make it up in our head? And if so, who determines what is good and what is evil? The government? Individuals? What happens when governments and individuals disagree about what's good and evil? What happens when the government does what is evil to the people, but they think it's good? Or is our sense of morality because the God has given us that sense of morality? And so there is a being by whom is the measuring rod, or has given us the measuring rod as to determine what good and evil actually is. And so the question at stake here is morality created in our own minds or by the culture, which would be relativism? Is morality relative to the eye of the beholder? Or is morality absolute? That is rape wrong only because you feel like it's wrong, or because rape is actually wrong? Is the Holocaust wrong because we have determined as a people group that we don't like Holocausts, or because God created us in his image and it's wrong to kill people who are created in his image? And you can see how the questions interrelate there. Number 4 is destiny. And the question is, where are we going? Where are we heading to? This will be contingent on all that we answered before this. If there is an afterlife, but there is no God, does everybody go to the same place? By what standards are good guys and bad guys' destiny determined in a world where God is a judge, or gods are judges? Do we rot in the ground? If there is no hell and there are no moral absolutes, then was Hitler one of the happiest men to ever live, since he lived entirely by what he wanted to do, killed himself peacefully, and now shares in the same existence as everybody else? Is there no justice for Hitler? Do we all have the same eternal destiny as somebody like a Hitler? If there is a God, or there are gods, by what standard does he or they use to determine where we go? Can we determine where we go by how we live our lives, or are we just doomed to the same existence? And so you can see how origin, meaning, morality, and destiny all kind of play into one another, and these are what make up a worldview and how we can determine the difference between a worldview. And so next time we're going to look at the different types of worldviews. We'll look at theism, we'll look at deism, we'll look at pantheism, panentheism, polytheism, pluralism, all these different isms, naturalism. And we'll determine what is the differences between these things, where do they compare, where do they contrast, and we might even get into some of the reasons as to why certain worldviews might have to answer better on one of these 4 elements. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening.